Hi everyone, it's Ren here. In this video I will be talking about my path towards self-discovery as an INFJ. A person who follows the channel has recently asked me to possibly consider making a video about that, and so I figured that it was a great idea, and here it is. So how did I come to the realization that I was an INFJ? Well, it was a fairly long process. I would say that it took, well, it depends. It depends like how far back I date my first attempt at figuring out my MBTI type. You know, I think that the very first time that I took it was when I was 18. And at the time, I believe that I do not remember exactly the type, but I assume that it was ENTP, ENTP, because it said like you know in the results it said you're like Barack Obama, and I mean I think he's an ENFJ, but a lot of those tests and a lot of those websites they tend to classify him as an ENTP, so I'm pretty sure that that's what I scored the first time, and then I forgot about it for like 10 years. So you imagine I only returned to it because I had a friend not far from here, in fact he no longer lives there, but he was an ENTP himself and an official one. He sort of mentioned it like maybe 2 years ago to me again. So yeah, I would have been 28 or 29. And he said, by the way, like, have you done this? Have you done this this test? Do you know what your type is? And I said, oh, I've done it before, and I think I was NT something, you know, and I didn't really give it much more thought. He didn't try to convince me to take it. But he encouraged me to try it out anyway, and so because I was curious and I respect his perspective, we're often interested in the same things. Well, we're not necessarily interested in the same things, but we're interested in trying out new things. I took the tests. So you're gonna laugh, but that time I was a bit more. I think I was a bit more, you know, honest with myself, maybe more self-aware, more of an adult as well, you know, undoubtedly. And I got what did I get? I got INFP. Yes, I got INFP. So when I say that I found a way to be a bit more honest with myself, I guess I mean by that I embraced my feeler side a little bit more, and I guess also my introversion. It's not so surprising that at 18 years old I would have liked to promote an image of myself as extroverted and as a thinker. Although the thinker side was very much a sticky part of my attempt at figuring out my true type, because when I read the INFP description, I kind of didn't really resonate with it. So I read it to him, we looked at it together, he was quite familiar with it, and he was thinking that it didn't really resonate with me that much. That I believe that he said that I was not as, again, he was reasoning in terms of cliches. I think we were both at the time reasoning in terms of cliches. We lacked the more refined understanding that we have now. But he was thinking that I was not idealistic in the INFP sense. I think that's what he was saying in abstract at the time, was that I was not an FI user. But so anyway, we were chatting, and I said, well, I'll try to take it again to see if I come up with something that's more accurate. And so I took it again, and then I got INTP. I must have been going through a period where I was like very liberal with my organization skills. I mean, we know that's not the difference between P and J in reality, but in the test, that's how you kind of end up getting P, is that if you say that you're not a very organized person and if you are really flexible. In any case, I was getting P all the time, and so I got INTP and I shared it with him, and we discussed it, and he was willing to contemplate the possibility of it much more. And I was also willing to contemplate the possibility of it much more, because it was a 16 personality test every time. We were noobs at the time. We were not, we were not looking into the functions or anything. And I remember that one of the paragraphs in the description says something like, "Oh, they pride themselves on the rigor of their intellect or on the vigor of their intellect or something." And Julian, my friend, was like, "Yeah, that's you." I guess sometimes I can give off the impression that I take my work seriously to the extent that it may come across as a little self-aggrandizing sometimes. Maybe less than I used to be now that I'm more self-aware. But anyway, I certainly resonated with that a bit. But still, like I showed it to another friend of mine who's still a good friend of mine in Geneva, and he's a STP himself, and he looked at it and he was like, he read the part about the fact that like an INTP was not always the most available or insightful person for like emotional support, which again is a cliche, but Stefano was saying to me, that's not you. You're very insightful and you're very supportive with your friends and you're very emotionally invested in that kind of thing. And that combined with my being not quite certain that the INTP thing resonated with me. I think at the time I was a bit jealous of the people who were saying, "Oh, I found something that really resonates," because for me it was always like a question of the one that resonated the most, or if you like, that was the least inadequate among the intuitives anyway. So yeah, I have to say that I embraced being INTP for a while, to the extent that I started visiting some forums, and not many, but a few, and I immediately realized that, like, I don't know, it wasn't for me, and I felt, I guess, that there were not enough topics on those forums that were dedicated to states of feeling and meaning in life, that I suppose tend to be more associated with idealists like NF types, maybe. I don't know. In any case, it didn't really resonate with me. So I decided to do the test again, and that time I got INTJ, right? So I looked into it, and that resonated with me more than INTP. But there was not a lot of emphasis on the feeling side of things, and I guess still that was missing a bit. But I showed that to Julian, and he was like, "That's you." I showed it to my mum, and she was like, "That suits you quite well." And so I started thinking, okay, I'm INTJ. But I continued thinking about it, and I was kind of like, okay, but the more I looked into INTJ, and I was starting to look into the functions then, and I was like, yeah, I got it, and it makes sense because of NI, and that really resonated with me. But there was something that was missing a bit, like the whole strategic side of the INTJ. Like, it's not that I'm not strategic, but for me, oftentimes I will first of all, I'm not good at all the supposedly good INTJ domains. I'm not the best at chess and a lot of like really rational stuff. I'm not the best at these things, and so I don't know. I was hesitating, and I looked online, and of course you have a lot of cliches about INTJs being emotionally cold and stuff like that, and I was confused, and I was at the time I was also starting to explore the Enneagram a bit, and I clearly settled on being a 4, and I kind of tried to see if INTJs could be type 4s, and apparently it's extremely rare. If not, it's not impossible, but it's extremely rare. And so I started thinking, okay, like maybe that's not what I am. So I became a bit confused. And I think that throughout, I never really considered the possibility of being an INFJ, but not only because I never got it in the test, but also because I didn't really resonate with the descriptions, the cliche descriptions of the type as being this humanitarian missionary, for the world, because I'm quite a private person. I keep to myself, and I'm not even the most giving of people. I can be giving of my emotional time and conversation, but in many ways, like I did not fit the description that I saw online. But I started looking into it, and because by then I knew more about the functions, I was kind of like, yeah, it has the NI of the INTJ that I identify with. It has the TI of the INTP that I identify with. And what's this FE thing and this FI thing? I need to figure it out. And then I thought to myself, yeah, but I'm kind of self-absorbed and I'm kind of individualistic, amn't I? So I must be FI. But then, like, I must be INTJ, but then I don't really use TE. Oh, but if you don't really use TE, you probably use FE, and if you use TI, yeah, you probably use FE. And then I started looking more into FE and to realize that a finer understanding of the distinction between FE and FI, was required to really figure out whether you were an FE or FI user, as I talked about in a recent video. And so that's how I got to realize also, yeah, I'm FE, and I'm emotionally expressive, very emotionally expressive. And I've always been told that. And so I thought, yeah, I have a strong TI, so perhaps my FE and my TI are kind of the same level. But if that's the case, and if I'm an I dominant, well, then I must be INFJ. And I joined a forum, and I started sharing my experiences, and I noticed that as opposed to the INTJ forum that I visited for a while, and as opposed to the INTP forum that I also visited, I resonated much more with the INFJs. And in fact, on that forum, there are also INFPs who initially thought they were INFJs, but because in the meantime, they became kind of friends with people on the forum, and they thought it was a nice place. It is a nice place. They stuck around, and the difference between me and the INFPs was quite flagrant, much more apart in terms of the function used than with the other INFJs, with whom, nevertheless, I was also quite different. I am quite different because everyone is an individual, a unique individual, of course. But yeah, I joined that forum last year, toward the end of the year. Well, in October, 10th of October not last year, 2017. So it's been about a year and a half that I've been on that forum. And it roughly corresponds to when I fully embraced my INFJ identity. I have to say that I became more or less convinced that I was INFJ a little prior to joining the forum. I posted on Reddit, on the INFJ subreddit, describing my hesitations between INTP and INTJ in particular, and how I felt like I didn't really fit with either. And someone said, well, maybe you're INFJ, have you considered that? And then I posted about potentially being INFJ, describing more, and people kind of confirmed it for me. And so not only was that interesting for me, but one of the people who responded in the thread encouraged me, said, you remind me of myself. I'm an INFJ with strong TI, used to repress FE. Feel free to drop me a private message. And we started a private conversation, and it was like I was talking to my brother, to my brother in typology, to my alter ego. It was really crazy. And I was thinking, if this guy is really INFJ, I must be INFJ. And he knew a lot about INFJ stuff. And he was quite young, actually. He was studying like family science, and he was very well versed in psychology. So a lot of his references to the MBTI model was enhanced by references from the psychology field as a whole. So I thought that his insights were incredibly penetrating. And to this day, he's one of the people that has talked about being INFJ to me in the most penetrating fashion. And yeah, so I lost contact with him, unfortunately, but that again would have been second half of 2017. And so these experiences online, talking to people who are INFJ, interacting with INFJs, were, I think, what sealed the deal. Noticing that I was identifying with them, essentially. Noticing that I was identifying with them. That there was a connection that was clear. I saw them write. Sometimes I saw them speak. I saw the way in which they reacted to things, and I was like, I identify with that. There are differences, but there is a clear pattern in common. Not the case with the other types, not nearly as much. And so since then, I've been embracing my identity as an INFJ, to the extent that I decided to make a channel on YouTube about it, to share my experience with you and to make videos about being INFJ with you. So I should hope that I really am one. I think that at that point, if I were not one, it would be just to me like the demise of my conviction that there is something worthwhile about the Myers-Briggs system and the Jungian typology. But in any case, that was my story. I would love to hear your own stories about how you came to the realization you were INFJ, whether it was direct and straightforward and there were no doubts, or whether the route was much more tortuous instead, like it was for me. Please let me know in the comments what your experiences were, and I will see you soon, guys. Take care. Have a great day.